This morning, we've had the latest UK inflation data. It's come out slightly better than expected, running up, I think, 2.5% in December. So we have seen some moves in the UK gilt market and also in the pound. I've done a trade this morning after this data. So this video is about what's going on with sterling and gilts and the trade I've done. So let's just get started and get into it. So let's take a look at some of these UK markets. We have just had this morning UK inflation data out for December. Unexpectedly dips to 2.5%, down from 2.6% the month before. There's the longer term chart. This is from the BBC. There's the longer term chart of inflation. Obviously, inflation was a real problem a couple of years ago, and it's come back since then. But of course, as usual, what's important? What do the markets think? So I'm going to look at the pound during this session, but let's just have a quick look at UK gilts. So this is the UK 10-year government bond, and a positive reaction to gilts. Yesterday they closed down just above 89, gapped up. This is the gap we can see here on that inflation data. So they opened up at 90 this morning. And so far they've held, so we've had a bit of a bounce in the gilt markets. Of course, if we look at the bigger picture for gilts, I mean, gilts and yields have really made the headlines over the last couple of weeks. But in the great scheme of things, UK gilts, like US Treasury bonds, like European bonds, have been dropping for quite a few years, the price of gilts, so the yield has been going up. So, I mean, it's interesting down here. I mean, I think the bond markets are interesting because we do have some great trends, as you can see. So I think it's interesting as to whether we see a short-term bottom down here. These were the lows from last Thursday, so just under a week ago. So far, at least, these have continued to hold. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Interesting to see how they trade the next couple of days once as this inflation data gets digested. But anyway, let's take a look at the pound. I've done a trade this morning in the pounds, not pound against the dollar, but let's take a look at that first of all. So this is pound against the dollar on the daily chart, and we have seen, for a number of factors, dollar strength being the major one. We've seen plenty of currencies, the euro, the yen, under pressure against the US dollar, because the dollar has strengthened in recent months, and the pound is no exception. If you go back to September 2024, a pound would buy you about $1.34. It was the highest the market had been since March 22. So we were at 2.5-year highs in September. And then this week, is that this week or the end of last week? Yeah, this week, Monday of this week, the market traded down to around 121. So a pound buys you $1.21, and that was the lowest since October 2023. So we're at a 15-month low on pound against the dollar. I think it is interesting here because, okay, it's made for some dramatic headlines the last couple of weeks, and if you live in the UK, you will have seen, plenty of headlines about gilt yields, pound weakness, all of that. But what's interesting is, to me anyway, in the great scheme of things, pound against the dollar is pretty much sideways over the last couple of years. These are the lows from March 2023, down ahead of 118. We had the highs, as I said, in September, up at 134. So we're just in quite a wide sideways range. And why I think it's interesting, it has slid a long way, relatively speaking, since September. It's down, about 1,300 points at its worst point. So it slipped about 10% since September. That's a big old slide for a currency. But we're back to where the buyers came back in October 2023. So for me, I think it's interesting from a pound versus the US dollar point of view. Have we seen the worst? Let's not get too carried away. We're only 2 days off. 2 days ago, the pound hit this 15-month low against the US dollar. But if it's going to turn around anywhere, then from a more longer term trading point of view, I think this 118, 120 area is an interesting one. So yeah, interested to see what happens here over the next couple of weeks or so into the end of January. Do we see a bit of confidence return to the pound, a bit of dollar weakness. Of course, there's a big question over the dollar this year. We've got a new government coming in the US, just in case you missed it. So who knows what that could mean for the economy, the US economy and the US dollar. But I thought it was interesting, down at these levels to see, do we see some strength coming back in? But absolutely in the short term, the trend is still down. So in the short term, the trade I would do on pound against the dollar would be a seller of strength. If I had to do a trade today, that's what I would be looking to do. But because we're back to these historical levels, I wonder more medium term, do we see it turn around? Anyway, let's see what happens. I have done a trade this morning on the pound, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. So a slight break before we get into the trade I've done. I'll do the trade again on the YouTube trading account, just to talk a bit about trading. For the last few years, I've been, by my standards, a fairly short-term trader, but over the years, I've done more longer-term trades. And I do think for most people, me included, it's a much more sensible way of trading. And it is one of my New Year's trading resolutions to go back and do more longer-term trades. Look at some of the market moves last year. We had the S&P up about 23%, gold up 26%. Some of the agricultural commodities, cocoa had a massive move from January into mid-April. There are really good trends longer term, and I think we can miss out on these if we're so focused on the short term. So I'm going to do more longer term trading stuff in 2025 and talk about it on YouTube as well. And I'm doing a webinar tomorrow evening UK time, so that's Thursday the 16th of January at 7 p.m. GMT. On longer term trading, on how I've traded it in the past and how I'm looking to trade it this year. So the setups I look for, managing risk, the markets I'm looking at, all of that. That's for the people who are in my WhatsApp group. There's a webinar typically every month. So that's the topic for Thursday's webinar. If you'd like to come along, you're more than welcome to attend. There's a couple of ways you can attend. Either join the WhatsApp group where you get daily updates to me about what's happening in markets. There's a link in the description down below. Use the code YouTube and you get 20% off the first month. You'll be invited to the webinar on Thursday night, and then you have a month's worth of WhatsApp group anyway. It's only a month by month commitment, so you don't need to stay in forever. Typically people are in for, on average, I think about at least 8 months. But if you join the WhatsApp group, you can come to tomorrow's webinar. Otherwise, I'll talk about my preferred broker in a second. I'm going to do a trade with the broker in a second. If you open an account with a preferred broker, link again in the description down below. Send me an email to dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk letting me know you've done that. I'll invite you to the webinar as well. So if you'd like to come along, there's a couple of options there. If you're watching this after the webinar's happened, after Thursday the 19th of whatever, January, it has been recorded. So again, if you do any of those things, drop me an email. I'll invite you, I'll send you the link to the recording. So that's it. I've been a longer term trader longer than I've been a shorter term trader. And I do think for most people, it is a much better way of trading. It's much less time intensive. You catch the bigger moves, all of that. Anyway, I'll talk about it in this webinar. If you'd like to attend, that's how you do it. Right, let's get back to the markets. And I'll show you this trade that I did this morning and I'm still in, and we'll place the trade now. So this is the trade I've done this morning. Sterling yen. So the pound against the Japanese yen. I did trade it, I think it was, when was it? I think perhaps in December. I was in a trade for a while. I came out when the pound really started moving lower earlier this year. So I came out for a small profit. But I looked at it again today and I thought, I do wonder, will we get a pound bounce from here? And I don't want to trade the pound against the dollar because I think the dollar is still strong. So I looked at sterling yen. And sterling yen, this is the daily chart on sterling yen. And it had been in an uptrend since August 2024. So since last summer, trading higher, blah, blah, blah. The last high in late December didn't take out the previous highs from October. So that trend had stalled a bit. But so far, at least, we do have higher lows. Okay, so perhaps the trend has definitely lost some momentum, but there have been higher lows. So I just wondered, we have seen the pound under pressure beginning of this year. Do we see something of a bounce from here and perhaps a retest of the 200 level in the pound? So perhaps an 800 point move from here back up to these highs. I don't know, but I thought it seemed an attractive trade. So that's the trade I've done. We'll do it, actually I'll do it another one just to talk through the stops and stuff. If you're looking at the RSI, you know, it was oversold in December. That did mark the bottom. Oversold just about in September. That was a turning point. And then it was oversold for a while in July, August, and it carried on lower. So at the moment, the RSI is not quite oversold. So perhaps I'm too early. I don't know. I tend not to worry too much about RSIs. I just want to go with the overall trend. Let's see what happens. And when it comes to stop losses, what I was thinking about was a stop the other side of the December low. So that's the idea for me, because if I think the thing is going to bounce, then really I want to see that December low hold, and that's it really. You know, so I'm willing to give it quite a bit of leeway here, because in my experience, markets take longer to turn around and move in our favour than we expect them to. You know, going back to the longer term trading approach. So if there is one thing I've learned over the years, or two things, it's to be patient and give trades time to work in your favour. So my stop is, I think it's down at 186. But anyway, to show you, let's do that trade. So this is a real money account down here, and it's the account I use with the broker that I recommend, and I use it for the live stream. So it's not my real trading account, but it has real money, and that trade is from a live stream trade, I think a while ago on a US stock. But let's do the trade. So what I want to do, I'd like to be a buyer, and I want to have a stop the other side of 188. Let's go 185. Let's do that. So I'm going to put my stop loss in. So I'm saying 185 for a stop. If I do 0.1 pounds per point, my risk is £67. Let's make it 0.2. So my risk on this trade is £134. I'm a buyer at 191.70, whatever it is trading now. Stop at 185. And let's see. So if this trade goes well, I expect to be in it for probably at least a couple of weeks. If it goes wrong, well, I'll be out of it. I'll be stopped out. So let's put that trade on. So there we go. So I'm in the trade now. Bought it at 191.70. You can see, going back to the chart, you can see I've got my entry point on the chart, my stop loss is on the chart. So I thought that was an interesting trade, you know, and like I say, I don't expect it to go running away in my favour straight away, but I thought it was an interesting trade down here. If we take a look on the hourlies, you know, we had that low in on Monday of this week. We have seen a bit of strength since then. A really aggressive stop here would be, you know, I could trade it bigger with a more aggressive stop, is a stop under Monday's low, this Monday's low. So Monday's low is 190. I want to give it more room, you know, again, going back to what I've learned over the years, you know, for me, tight stops do not suit my approach to trading. I'm quite happy to give things a bit of room and try and go for the bigger swing. So we'll see how that works out. So, you know, off the back of this UK inflation data this morning, I think it is an interesting time for the pound, for gilts, all of that sort of stuff. So for me, I thought sterling yen is perhaps the interesting trade here, to see if this trend that has been stalling a bit, but this trend since August carries on. So that was the trade. That's it for this update on sterling and gilts and all of that, and the trade I did in sterling yen. Interesting to see how that works out. We'll take a look in Friday's live stream. If it's the first time you've seen anything from me, welcome to the channel. If you could subscribe and like and all of that usual YouTube stuff, I'd be grateful, because it helps me grow the channel and gives me an incentive to keep on doing stuff. Any questions, feel free to drop me an email. Always happy to answer any questions. I don't have all the answers, but I have been doing this a long time, so I definitely have an opinion. Otherwise, we're done, aren't we? So until Friday's live stream, good luck with your trading, and hopefully see you again soon.